Hey everyone, I am videoing today sitting on my dad's front porch. Uh, as many of you know, one of my favorite places on earth. I was very flattered by some of your comments that you left when I had posted Dad's obituary. Many of you commented that you knew how much I would miss him and sitting on the front porch with him. And that's true. But it flattered me. I laughed at myself because I'm so transparent. I tell the world everything. And I didn't realize how much I post about sitting on the front porch with Dad. But it's my favorite. And he will be missed sitting on the front porch, but lots of memories here, and I'm thankful. I wanted to share some stories about my dad, and I want to share them at his funeral tomorrow, but I know myself and I feel like I'll start crying. And I'm not afraid to cry in front of people, but it's ugly, y'all. It is so ugly. and I don't know if I'll be able to get through it. So I'm going to share this here and maybe send it to friends and family if I'm not able to share that tomorrow. But it needs to be said. It needs to be said. My dad is worthy of the honor in some of these stories. If you knew my dad, he was a kind, quiet gentleman. He was a cowboy. Admittedly so, he would tell you, he'll talk to you if you talk to him, but he's probably not going to start the conversation. And when you talk with him, it's going to be a good conversation, but he was not going to start it. He's a very quiet guy. But overall, family and friends would agree. They would define him as a quiet, gentle, good man, hard worker, family man. But what spoke volumes was his actions and his character. He taught us many lessons using only a few words and sometimes no words at all. There are some things in life that tend to change from time to time, but Dad, he didn't change. He was the same. He was content, consistent. There's a verse in 1 Timothy 6:6 that says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." And that was Dad. He loved God. He loved his family. He loved his country. And he was content with what he had and what he didn't have. And in essence, he had great gain. He had the world. There's something in that for us all to walk away with. Godliness with contentment is great gain. He also believed in Matthew 6:33, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all the other things are going to fall into place for you." And that was Dad. Have you not heard the story about my dad's chair? I think it's their generation, my friend and I were talking about. Dad had his chair. He and Mom had two recliners sitting side by side. Before they built the garage, they had their parking spaces side by side. And you just didn't sit in those chairs and you didn't park in those spaces. It was unsaid. It was the unwritten rule. But my sister, when she started dating her now husband of over 40 years, she was bringing him to the house to introduce him to Mom and Dad. Well, Mom and Dad and I had gone out to eat one night. I was a little girl. I was 5. I was 5 when they started dating, I think. And when we drove up to the house after eating, somebody was parked in Dad's parking spot. And even as a little girl, and even with the unwritten rules and unspoken rules that there were, I just knew that wasn't good for somebody to be parked in Dad's spot. And we walked in the house, and there was somebody sitting in Dad's chair. And I'm thinking, this is not good. So we walk into the house, and Nancy jumps up and says, "Hey, Mom and Dad, this is Greg, my boyfriend. Greg, this is my Mom and Dad." Dad looked at Greg. He said, "Son, good to meet you." He said, "But I needed to let you know 2 things." He said, "You're welcome at my house, but there's 2 things you don't do. You don't sit in my chair and you don't park in my space. And right now you're doing both of those." Greg jumped up apologetically, went and parked his truck on the road, and came back in and visited with Mom and Dad. And like I said, over 40 years later, they're still together. So didn't scare him off too bad. But Dad's chair. For the life of me, I really never saw him sit anywhere else in the living room but in his chair. Um, but going through the pictures and the slideshow for the funeral, it would seem that one of the grandkids got in his chair while he sat in Mom's chair, and they would eat ice cream together. He got soft. He got soft there in his late 80s. But that would have never happened back in the day. When Dad walked into the room, if you were sitting in the chair, you just got up. You knew he was going to sit in his chair. It was fun when the grandkids were little. They would love to sit in his chair and holler, "Papa, I'm in your chair." And Dad would come in and he'd pick him up by a leg, hang him upside down, set him on the floor, and he'd sit in his chair. Lots of giggles, lots of memories there. So thankful for that. Sorry, I'm reading from this. Dad was very gentle, never one to get angry, but I did see a meme a while back that so reminded me of Dad. He was not one to get angry, but if he did and he had had enough, this reminded me of him. This meme. The meme said, "Some of y'all have never heard your dad's belt slide out of 6 belt loops in 2.6 seconds, and it shows." Not only was Dad talented enough to pull that belt out of his belt loop in 2.6 seconds, he did it all while flying out of a reclining position in his recliner at the same time. And all my siblings will testify, and maybe even a few grandkids or two can testify, we turned out to be decent human beings, all due to the fact that Dad's belt slid out so easily from under those belt loops. Again, Dad had his parking space back in the day. You just didn't park in it. Unspoken rule. Everybody knew, except Greg. Back in the day before his eyesight became so poor, he would read the Lake Charles American Press from cover to cover. No one could touch the paper before he had. If you dared touch it, you better make sure you put it back in its initial state as if it had never been touched. He wanted it just like Fern and Lawrence Pruitt had just delivered it. Dad believed Ford by far is the best built truck. Although he surprised us all and bought a Dodge one year, a big Dodge. But he sold that and bought a small Toyota for Mom to get in and out of a little easier when she got sick. For Dad to give up his truck and transition to a small SUV was just like Dad's character. He believed you do what you gotta do. He missed that truck, but he loved Mom more, and he was willing to make the sacrifice. Mom's health conditions were hard, but Dad never was one to complain. And if you've been a caregiver for a dementia patient, it is by far, in my opinion, one of the hardest diseases to manage for the caregiver. While taking care of Mom one night, she was super sad that we had to take care of her, and she would often cry while we were doing so. And Dad, in a sweet tone, told her one night, "Honey, what can't be helped must be endured." And he continued on helping us take care of her, and sometimes taking care of her by himself. He provided the best care he could for Mom, and he endured it. Another lesson Dad will remind us of, even if you've got the money to buy it, it doesn't mean you need to. It won't hurt you to wait, or even to do without it. But if you do decide to purchase it, see if they have a coupon for it, or maybe even if they have a rebate. Sometimes when my kids would visit him, he'd take them to go eat at Burger King. He'd ask them how they liked their burgers, what all they liked on it, but then would pull out a coupon for 2 chicken sandwiches for $6. Kate always laughed at the thought that they could have saved the whole "how do you like your burger" conversation if he would have known Papa was going to buy them chicken sandwiches. But my kids were thankful nonetheless, and they've learned the lesson. Order the stuff you have a coupon for. Those of you who know Dad, a pair of Wranglers, a pair of cowboy boots, and a plaid button-down Western shirt. That's the appropriate outfit for any occasion. Once when Dad was in the hospital, I walked into what I thought to be his room, but he wasn't there. And there was no sign I could see that his seemingly empty room could be his. No wallet, no cell phone. until I started to walk back out of the room to go ask a nurse. I saw a pair of cowboy boots sitting there, and I knew I was in the right place. We can also learn from Dad, hard work never killed anybody. Dad worked at Texaco for 39 years, and I'm not sure he ever missed a day. He can tell you many a story about working the rice fields down in Bell City with the Grags, or clearing out pasture fields of tallow trees. Before he became a little bit feeble, you never would have seen his yard not mowed or weed eated. He believed in taking care of his place. Dad is an instant friend with all animals, an animal whisperer, if you will. His common catchphrase for any new dog he met was, "What you say, Pooch?" It was very common for Dad to have all kinds of animals throughout his life: cows, horses, chickens, pigs, guineas, ducks, peacocks, even to this day, the 2 donkeys. The only thing sadder today for me that Dad has passed is that he won't get to attend his own funeral. He loved funerals, and I say that with the utmost respect. He had a heart for those who had lost a loved one, him having already lost 2 wives, a son, his parents, a brother, a daughter-in-law. He loved to call us to let us know someone had passed. I credit that to his genes, genetic genes. Our mama, his mom, was the same way. They loved to know who had passed and to be able to share that information with others so they could reach out to those who were hurting, who had lost a loved one. Dad loved to come to the funeral home, pay his respects to the living, and then go sit in the coffee room and shoot the breeze with family and friends in there. It was a good place to reunite. Dad did dip skull back in the day, and he had this gold spittoon that sat on the side of his chair. He would not empty that thing until it was almost full. And there had been a holiday or two in our remembrance, a family gathering, where a grandbaby accidentally crawled over in curiosity and got into that spittoon. Dad treated people fairly. If he owed you 37 cents, you're going to get that 37 cents. Not a penny more, not a penny less. But he believed in paying back what you owe. Pay your debts, pay your bills, on time. He was a generous giver. It was in his nature to give and help people. He believed in treating people right. When I was in elementary, we had a gentleman that would come to our house to give me piano lessons. And bless his heart, the gentleman didn't wear deodorant and just had that smell when he would come to the house. And I would often complain to Mom and Dad about it. It was hard to sit through piano lessons, play what was expected, all the while holding my breath for 30 minutes. One piano lesson day, I was playing at my friend Rhonda's next door. Rhonda saw my piano teacher drive up and told me, "Hey, your piano teacher's there." I said, "I ain't going." She said, "Why not?" I said, "I told her, I don't like the smell of my piano teacher." Pretty soon I could hear Mom hollering for me, "Mona, Mona." She kept hollering. Rhonda said, "You better go." I said, "I'm not going." All of a sudden, deep, thunderous voice, 2 words, "Mona Marie." I told her, I said, "I gotta go." It was Dad. He had called my name, and you don't wait for Dad to say your name twice. So I walked over to the house, ran over to the house, and did my piano lesson. When I was done, Dad told me to go to his room. He wanted to talk to me. I just knew talking meant spanking. I sat on the bed waiting for Dad's arrival. He walked in and sat on the bed and said, "You can't treat people that way." I replied, "But Dad..." He said, "You heard me. You can't treat people that way." And he walked out of the room. Enough was said. In true Dad fashion, a few words, "You can't treat people that way." Those few words, Dad reminded me, people may be different than you. They may look or smell differently than you do. They may believe or vote differently than you do. But you can't treat people that way. Treat them with kindness. Dad would tell you today that a piece of bread and syrup makes a good dessert after supper, or a cup of coffee. Coffee was a good way to end a meal. And speaking of supper, no phone calls during supper, and no TV playing while the family ate around at the table. That did change over the years, but he was pretty hard-nosed about it at one time when all the siblings were still at home. And don't you dare snub your nose at something you didn't like that had been cooked. You were going to try a little bit of everything off the table. Pocket knives. you can always count on Dad to have his pocket knife. A pocket knife can dig almost anything out of your hand, and the whole time he is digging with his knife with a death grip on your finger, he's reassuring you, that don't hurt, that don't hurt. But that pocket knife could also sharpen your pencil when you needed one for homework, open a package that just came in the mail. It could clean your fingernails. It could also serve as a knife that you needed to spread mayo or mustard on your sandwich at a rest stop on vacation if Mom had forgot to bring one with us. Dad would tell you, if you got anything aching on your body or any sores on your body, Mercurochrome. Monkey blood, some of you may know it by. Mercurochrome will cure just about anything, but it has to be orange. Mercurochrome did come out with a clear liquid one time. That won't work. It had to be orange for it to be able to work. Coffee's good at any time of the day. And that stuff they make at Starbucks, that ain't real coffee. And you're out of your mind if you pay the price you do for it. It never ceased to amaze me. Dad could come in hot and sweaty from the barn or mowing the yard or doing some kind of manual labor. And the first thing he'd ask when he walked in the door, honey, you got a pot of coffee on? Praying. Dad was a prayer. Siblings, grandkids, great-grandkids, he prayed for you. And he prayed for you often. Even when he couldn't really read his Bible anymore because he couldn't see it or he couldn't hear it from the devices we had bought for him, he still prayed. He prayed for you. He also prayed for our president each day. It didn't matter if he was praying for his blessing for his lunch. He was going to pray for our president. He would pray for God to give our president wisdom and help make America great again. He believed in America and wanted the best for her. A dearly loved cousin of his passed away. The cousin's son asked me if Dad would pray at the graveside. Not being quite sure where the cousin stood on the political line, I wanted to make sure that he knew Dad would be glad to pray, but I wanted him to know that Dad would be praying for our president in that prayer. I didn't want the family to be offended. The son questioned me, at a funeral? He's going to pray for the president at a funeral? I reiterated, yes, Dad is going to pray for your family and that the Holy Spirit will bring your family comfort during your time of loss. But he's going to ask God to also bless our president and help him make America great again. The cousin looked at me like he didn't quite believe me, but okay. And sure enough, as the son was videoing the memorial, they asked Dad to pray. Dad prayed for the family. He prayed for comfort for the family. And he prayed for our president, that God would give him wisdom to help make America great again. The son and I quietly opened our eyes, looked at each other, winked, smiled, and went back to praying. That's my dad. He never changed. Dad loved to whistle. Always felt like if Dad was whistling, he was in a good place. Even when taking care of Mom would get very stressful and I'd be at my wit's end, I'd hear Dad whistling. And I felt like he was in a good place. And if Dad was in a good place, so was I. One of my favorite things to do was to sit with him on the porch and listen to him interact with a mockingbird, seeing if the mockingbird would mock the tune Dad would whistle. So many things about my dad never changed. He, in essence, to me, was the same man for 48 years of my life. And for those of you who knew him longer, or perhaps his entire life, you know he was the same gentleman for 87 years until last Wednesday morning. He never changed. I want to end this one last story about Dad. I wanted to try out for cheerleader my 6th grade year. I just knew I was going to make it. Cheering was one of my favorite things to do. But sadly enough, I didn't make it. And I waited for Mom after school to come pick me up, all the while trying not to bust out crying in front of my friends who had made it, try to be happy for them, treat people right like Dad would tell me. For some odd reason, a Ford truck turned the corner into my school. It was Dad. Dad never picks me up. This is the worst day ever. I crawled slowly into the truck and Dad said, well, how'd it go? Again, trying not to bust out crying, I said, I didn't make it. And Dad wasn't sure what to do with that, nor was I. All along Highway 90 from Sulphur to Edgerly, what was 7 miles seemed like 10,800. I stared out the window and looked at every tree that passed me by. Dad didn't know what to say, and I knew if I said anything I'd start crying, so we sat in silence. We finally made it home. I walked quickly to my bedroom and lay face down on my bed crying. My world would end. I was not sure if I'd be able to face anyone at school tomorrow. Life was over. But I heard my bedroom door open. I thought it was Mom, but instead it was Dad. He walked in, he sat on my bed, and as I still hid my face in my pillow crying, Dad tapped me on the back of my leg and said, "Hey, it's going to be all right." And he walked out. That was it. There it was again. Just like Dad. A man of many lessons, with few words and sometimes none. But he was right. It was going to be all right. And it did turn out all right. Over 35 or so years later, it's still all right. I made it. I lived. Dad believed it. He knew, like Romans 8:28, all things work together for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. He would encourage us today, love God, trust God, believe God, work hard, love your family, pray for your family and your president. And it's going to be all right. One last thing. Those of you who grew up at Antioch might remember you picked your favorite hymn night. You'd sit in the audience. It was just a singing night, and you could call out your favorite hymn number. And Dad was always going to call out page 510, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Some of you might not recognize that name, but it's Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, right? That was one of Dad's favorite songs. If we had a pick'em night, Dad was picking 510, Battle Hymn of the Republic. Again, his love of country and his love of God shining through. Gonna miss you, Dad. Love you.